Let me introduce our next presenter. Our next presenter is a lecturer with the Learning Sciences and Technologies Department in NIE. She will show how the process of digital curation with Diigo can help student teachers appraise and select appropriate technologies for integration into teaching and learning. Please put your hand together and welcome Dr. Ying.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ying. I'm from the Learning Sciences and Technologies Academic Group. You can hear me now, right? Good. I was hoping, to be informal and to be down there, but looks like it's not happening. But that's okay. That's okay. And thank you for taking time out to listen to come to this session on digital curation with Diigo. The purpose of my presentation here is really to share with you and to present to you how, through the process of digital curation, in this case I use Diigo, actually help my student teachers in terms of enhancing their knowledge of the pedagogical fit between digital media and the choice of instructional strategies. Okay, so to give you a little bit of a background of how this project of mine came about, essentially there is an exponential growth of online resources that's available right now for teaching and learning. So it is a good problem in a way that there are many, many stuff out there now that teachers could use for incorporation into their lesson. But therein comes the challenge as well, because how then do we tell how good is one from another? So if a particular resource is good, to what extent it's good? In what ways is it good for? So it's very time-consuming for, in this case, our student teachers to actually go through the appraisal process, to actually go through what there is out there, to look through what there is. So in this, I thought it's timely for me to mold this little project of mine, and that is really to have a platform and a process that allows my student teachers to do a couple of things, and they are curation of appropriate digital media that they can use in Singapore classrooms. Why? Because a lot of these resources are also developed outside of the Singapore context. Many of them are US, UK based. So they could be suitable up to a certain extent. So that's one of the reasons why we want the student teachers to go through them and to see, okay, to what extent it is useful for our Singapore classrooms. But that's just not it. We don't want them to just go search, but we also want them to value add. So in terms of having some kind of annotations of sort that say, okay, this particular resource is about a simulation or interactivity kind of stuff. And we also want them to also think about if it's a simulation, what could it be? What strategies would it be good for? Is it good for learning by doing? Is it good for self-directed learning? So on and so forth. So it's to value add in this case via some form of annotations or some form of note-taking about the quality of the resources. And of course, a larger goal of mine is really to promote a sharing, a participatory culture among my student teachers. So you heard what digital, or rather the title of my talk is about digital curation. So what is digital curation in brief? Essentially, if you think about curation, you think about a museum, sometimes library. But digital curation in this case is really about maintaining, about adding value, in this case, digital information. So this maintenance and this value adding of digital information could be for current use, it could be for future use. And as I understand in the literature right now, digital curation is a fairly new practice. And in fact, this practice is still evolving. So the definition is still evolving because there are many different ways to actually do digital curation. And along with digital curation, the tool that I use is actually Diigo. So what is Diigo? Diigo first started out some years back, and they started out as a bookmarking tool. So you could bookmark web pages that you've searched, and you could perhaps organize them. You could also do some basic note-taking. But I think Diigo has grown as well, and today in Diigo you not only bookmark, You can share your bookmarks. You can create a research groups around the bookmarks, and you can have discussions, annotations, and so on and so forth. So you could actually have a little community around the whole practice of bookmarking. So Diigo, in a way, has grown as well. And to find out more about Diigo for you, it's just a YouTube away, because I believe you're all pretty tech-savvy people, right? So you can find out more about Diigo there. So putting Diigo and putting social curation together, this is a little bit more context of what this project is about. Essentially, like I mentioned, I wanted my student teachers to have easier access to online resources that they could use as part of their lesson planning, as part of their teaching and learning repertoire. And at the same time, in a way, it's curated, so they don't have to search or spend so much time to search for them. And I basically did this project across 3 weeks, both face-to-face and outside curriculum time. So basically what this means is that when my student teachers come to class, essentially what they had to do was they had to do some lesson planning about ICT integration. So they had to think about either a topic in science or math, and they had to think about or even create some ICT resources that go in tandem with the lesson. And to help them in that process, I have this project that runs parallel with it, so that they, in a way, would have some ready resources or some resources that have been curated that they could look at it fairly easily. I had about 30 students or so that participated in this project. And basically what I got them to do was I got them to apply to join. So I created a group in Diigo. They applied to join the group. And thereafter, to encourage them to go curate. So they go search, and as they search for something, not just to put it on the Diigo group, but also to add a particular description or add some description to that particular resource. So they could say like what this resource is about, what it could do, so on and so forth. I also encourage them to read other people's bookmarks or the bookmarks that were done by their peers, so that they could add value. They could perhaps say, okay, one other peer said something else, but it's also good for these other things, so just to add on to what has been said. And part of this process, I started out by modeling for them what the kind of stuff that I'm expecting them to see on Diigo. So I don't want them to say things like, here it is, go see. It's really non-value adding. So I did a couple of uploads and bookmarking just to show them what I'm expecting. Okay, so let's take a look at what they have on Diigo. And basically, I'll be sharing with you a couple of case examples. And you can see from these case examples, the student teachers actually are able to describe some of the affordances of the tool, what it lends to, in terms of teaching and learning, in terms of is it a video, is it a simulation. And the coupling to that description of affordance is actually a description or some kind of a recommendation of the kind of instructional choices that can go with it. So you will see them say things like, oh, it's good as a summary, it's good for collaborative learning, so on and so forth. So you will see this kind of interactions that happen here in the 2 case examples I'm sharing with you. The first one is actually this PHET interactive simulations. It's a lot of science resources simulations that were developed by University of Colorado Boulder. And generally, my science student teachers found this very, very useful. And it started out with this student, W, that posted this up. And the student said that, oh, there's quite a few nice simulations there. And there was some elaboration. The student says, it gives a nice visual representation for difficult concepts. So a lot of these difficult science concepts are often abstract in nature. So some of these simulations do a pretty good job in terms of visually representing these concepts to aid understanding. And the student went on to say, you could actually use the simulations as self-managed learning. So in this case, they are actually referencing the theory of self-directed learning, and that when students given the resource, they could actually manage the learning process themselves. And the student even recommended, say, that you could also use it as part of cooperative or collaborative learning setting. So student Y came along, and student Y added on to say things like, as an additional tool in teaching, And student Y has a reason for saying that, not the only tool, but an additional tool, because this particular resource does not have clear explanations of some of the concepts. So it's very good appraisal here that they're critical. They see some value in it, but they also saw the extent of that value, which is good. And of course, you can see student S saying something like helpful simulations. But again here, it's quite hard to justify pedagogies like learning by doing because it's after all still a simulation or even real world context. Okay? This is the second example, and this particular resource is called the Absorb Learning. And again, you see that description of affordance and some recommendations in terms of instructional strategies. So you see things like they say, student C started out by saying it's basically interactive online courses for secondary schools and describe the range of topics or subjects, that is included in this resource. So student E, again, further value add to that. Student E said that for chemistry, it contains or covers several animations with explanations. However, the content may not be too detailed. So a recommended instructional strategy could be perhaps as an introduction or a summary to what the topic is about. And of course, you see the reinforcement in the posting that student Y said. Okay. So general observations that I made in this little activity that I did with them across 3 weeks, there were about 15 or so bookmarks that were created of different resources. Of the 15, about 6 had extended discussion, so I just picked some of them, and 2 of them are what you saw. In terms of text, because Diigo, as with many other social media tools, do a lot of text, so you could see the trending that's happening on this particular Diigo group. And in this case, I could see that it leans towards chemistry and it leans towards simulations, right? And the kind of interaction that the student teachers bring to this Diigo group is actually the explanation of the affordance of the tools, as well as how it relates to meaningful learning, as well as how it relates to the choice of instructional strategies that can be associated with some of these online resources. And I think I have 5 more minutes left, so I'm right on time. This is the reference that I've used. And that's all that I have.